Hey, this is Vince Papale. I'm a fellow Hawk brother, and of course I'm the guy from Invincible, and you're listening to Sports and Rants with Brett and Pants right here on 1851, my Hawk brothers, and the Hawk will never die.
And we are on live with former Philadelphia Flyer Keith Jones. How you doing today, Jonesy?
I'm doing well, guys. Getting ready for some hockey to get started up here. Finally, some real games just around the corner, and rosters seem to be being solidified, and I think preseason was okay, but looking forward to the regular season, of course.
Yeah, so what are you thinking about this upcoming season for the Flyers?
I think they're going to be a very well-conditioned team. I think they're going to be, extremely competitive. I think that they're going to challenge amongst the top teams in the Eastern Conference. I don't think they're in the top tier as far as the top 3 or 4 teams, but I think they can beat any of those teams on any given night. And I think by the time all the dust settles that they'll be in the playoffs. And as we watched with the New York Rangers last year, getting in is the most important thing, especially in the Eastern Conference, to give yourself a chance to get on a run and possibly get to the Stanley Cup final if you get rolling that well after the trade deadline.
Do you think injuries will be a major factor this coming season?
They sure can be. There's no question about that. But in the salary cap world, the timing of those injuries and how serious the injuries are really play into what a team can do as far as filling that void. If it's a star player that goes down that's on a big-time contract but is done for the season, then you might be able to, prior to the trade deadline, pick up a nice piece that can help you out in the immediate future. If it happens where the timing is really bad and you don't have a chance to replace that asset, it can be real difficult. So there's no question injuries, they play a critical part in any team's championship drive. And if you look at the last couple of Stanley Cup champions, the Kings and the Blackhawks, they were, for the most part, injury-free, especially come playoff time. I think that really bodes well for any team that wants to win it all.
Now, from your perspective, a guy that played here and now is living here, is it expected for the Flyers to be in the playoffs each year?
Yeah, it is, and that's fair. I mean, it's not easy. The Red Wings are, obviously applauded for their streak of reaching the postseason, but the Flyers are right there.
Yeah.
It's been a while, of course, since they won a Stanley Cup, and for Detroit, they put 3 in the mix there, so obviously they're in a little bit different place right now. But there's no question success in the regular season, leads to playoff opportunities, and the Flyers have had plenty of those. I think the frustration for the fans is getting over that hump and getting a Stanley Cup championship. And, they may have to stay patient on that one this year as well. It looks like Ron Hextall's got a real, patient formula for how he wants to get this team to the championship, and it may take some time.
Yeah, with a guy like Hextall, what's your opinion of him and his GM perspective now?
He's tough. He is. I like it. He's got a real hard attitude, just like when he played the game. He was a terrific teammate, but a very serious one that knew when it was time to get down to business and when it was time to have a little bit of fun. I think he's got a good balance with that, but I think he's very driven and motivated and wants to get that championship that eluded him as a player, but that he's been a part of on the management side of things with the LA Kings. I think he's going to do a terrific job. I like his approach. And I don't think he's in a rush to get it done, and I think that's going to serve the Flyers well in the future.
Now, what's your opinion on that? Now we're seeing a lot of former hockey players now going into the upper management of teams. What's your opinion of that, especially in the general manager position?
I think in most cases where they become a general manager, they spend a lot of time after their playing career in various roles within the organization. So I do think that there's a real power to that. Having a former player perspective, but also spending time just in and around the management of a hockey club. I think it's important. If you look at Ron Hextall, he spent a lot of time as an assistant GM with the Flyers and then as an assistant GM with the LA Kings. He's got enough under his belt, enough experience that it should bode well for him in that GM seat. I'm not a big fan of it when you just jump right in from your playing career, But it has worked well in Colorado, where Joe Sakic now is the general manager this year. Last year he was more of a president-type role, but I think that experience that he garnered, will serve him well. And the Avalanche obviously had a great year last year with Patrick Roy behind the bench.
All right, now we're going to get into a little bit about your career and growing up. How did you get interested in playing hockey?
I was Canadian. I grew up in Wayne Gretzky's hometown, Brantford, Ontario, so there wasn't a whole lot of things to do other than play hockey. We played on outdoor rinks. The tennis courts would be flooded and turned into an ice rink. They put the boards up on the fence that kept the tennis balls in the summer and kept the pucks from going out in the winter. We sat on snowbanks as benches, wore winter hats or toques underneath our helmets if we wore helmets at all. And that's just what we did. And it was, some of my best memories in life come through hockey. And I felt very lucky at a young age to be able to play it. It's an expensive sport. And I was, really privileged to have the chance to travel around and, play on AAA hockey teams and, just kind of get that early opportunity to kind of figure out if it was something I loved, and I really did. So I was, at the end, I'm very fortunate and very happy that it was hockey that I chose, and later on was able to continue on in it.
Hello, Keith?
Yep, gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Okay, our next question for you is, what was that process like, just growing up and playing and then eventually reaching the NHL in the draft?
Well, it was a long road. When I started, I was very good as a little guy, and then got to the teenage years, and everyone kind of went past me. I was a late bloomer as far as growing. That's a genetic thing. I blame it on my parents, but at certain points, I was thinking about not playing, and about moving down a level, and eventually I did. There's AAA hockey in Canada, and then there's AA hockey, and I went down and played a year of AA hockey and really gained my confidence again. Was able to play, a lot in a lot of different situations, and started to develop my game once again. That was probably around the age of 14 or 15. Was not drafted to major junior A hockey in Canada. Was disappointed about that, but looking back on it, I shouldn't have been. I wasn't good enough at that time. And it gave me more time to grow, playing smaller junior leagues in Canada and traveling on a school bus and, wearing blue jeans and a pair of cowboy boots to the game. A pretty laid-back atmosphere of the smaller towns of Canada. And then started to kind of get better again. And from junior B hockey, I was noticed by a scout who came to watch a young 15-year-old that was playing junior B that had a lot of potential. And I was a 19-year-old, just actually turning 19, kind of a veteran player in that league, and he took a liking to me. And the Washington Capitals then drafted me in that off-season, the summer of 1988, and said, there's no way you're coming to camp. We got to find a school for you to go to that you can develop and get in better shape and get stronger. And they set me up at Western Michigan University, and I went there for 4 years before ultimately signing with the Capitals after my fourth year and going from a seventh-round pick to playing the following season after leaving college. So it's a bit of a long road to take, but in the end, it kind of worked out really well for me.
At what point did you know that the Capitals were interested in you?
Well, they came and met me after a junior B game, and the guy said, my name's Jack Button. I'm a scout for the Washington Capitals, and I thought he was joking. And he said, no, I really am. I'm very interested in you as a player, and I still thought he was joking. So we went back and forth for a while trying to figure out if this was actually a real thing. And it was kind of a shocking thing for me because as a 19-year-old, most players have already been drafted. I went and used to go to Maple Leaf Gardens as a fan to watch games at that age, and all of a sudden I was talking to a guy from that league that was thinking about drafting me. It had not entered my mind at that point. I thought the dream of playing in the National Hockey League was gone, and then all of a sudden it came back, and kind of mapped out a plan from there and took advantage of that small opening in the window to kind of pry my way in. And and see if I could stay and hang around a little while.
Now, how important was that experience at Western Michigan for you?
It was everything. Without it, I would never have made it to the National Hockey League. If I went as a 19-year-old that was just drafted, I would have been chased out of training camp and never been seen again, which can happen. But having 4 years of college, not just hockey experience, playing in all different roles, but in the weight room and figuring out what it was all about to be a professional player, and being committed to getting in better shape and doing all the little things that can make the difference. I never would have made it without that, and I owe a lot to my college hockey experience. A lot of it had to do with you start as a fourth line player, you have to earn your stripes with the seniors and the juniors, and by the end I was playing in all situations and an important part of our program there. I think a lot of that served me well, because when I started the NHL, I went back to being a fourth-line player when I entered the league with Washington, but then was able to work my way up through all four lines and eventually be a top-line player. A lot of that had to do with my college experience.
Now, what was the experience like for you? You played a couple years in the NHL, and then you would come to Philadelphia, a major city. What was that like for you?
It was excellent. I started in Washington, which was laid back, and I was there for 5 years with the Capitals. We had good teams, always competitive, but never drew the same passion from the fans or the same attendance from the fans. So something was missing. Went to Colorado right after they won the Cup, so that was a packed house and an exciting team to play for, with Waugh and Sakic and Forsberg and Kaminsky and Lemieux and Ozil. We had a bunch of superstars. And then to come to Philly was fantastic as well, a hockey town that had been, an established hockey market that my style of play fortunately fit in. It was a great experience. I only wish I didn't get injured and have to retire, because I would have loved to continue to be a Flyer for a long time, and many more years than I actually was, just 3 seasons that I was with the team.
What would you consider your style of play, like you mentioned? What was your role in the teams you played for?
My role was to complement players that were more talented than me. That's really what it was, and that meant whatever it took. If I wanted to stay in the top line, I had to distract the opposition away from our stars, so that would be, that kind of rat-like player or irritating guy that would get under the skin of an opponent. I had to produce, so you better have, some good instincts. I was an intelligent hockey player. I had good hockey sense, and that really helped me with the players that I was able to play with, Leclerc and Lindros in Philly, Sakic and Forsberg in Colorado. And I would find myself playing on lines with that type of talent. It wasn't because I was, better or even equal to those players at all. It was that I could complement them, and they liked playing with me. So that teamwork aspect worked, and then it continues to serve me well in the jobs that I do today. Just being part of the mix, not trying to be the star, but trying to, blend in and make other people around you better. And those things can really help you, not just in the hockey world, but in the business world or in the communication world that you guys are in. All things related to teamwork, I seem to get a pretty strong grasp of early on in life, and that really served me well.
Now, when you were at the Flyers, you were in one of the most memorable games in Flyers history, the 5-overtime game with the Penguins. What was that like for you, and how did you guys stay hydrated during that game?
Yeah, that's a great memory. I was at the point in my career, I retired shortly after that, the next season early, and I didn't have a lot left in the tank. And I came into that game, we were down 2-1. The Penguins beat us both games in Philadelphia. We went into Pittsburgh and beat them in overtime in Game 1, and then we found ourselves in this 5-overtime marathon the next night. I believe a couple of guys got injured early in the game for us, too, so we had a shortened bench. I thought I'd be probably playing about 10 to 12 minutes of ice time. That's where I was at in my career at that point. I ended up playing close to 40, which was nothing compared to some guys played like 65 or 70, if I remember right. And I just remember my legs felt like they had lead in them. We had pizza in the locker room between periods. We had guys with IVs. we had a great time with it. I will tell you that. We had a lot of great guys in that locker room. Rick Tockett, Craig Berube, Dan McGillis, Luke Richards. And we had a really tight team that really enjoyed each other. Mark Recchi was there as well, Keith Primo. And we had a fun time with it, enjoyed it, and ended up getting that great goal by Keith Primo in the fifth overtime, and then went on to win the next two games of that series as well before falling to the Devils the following round after being up 3-1. You wonder if that fifth overtime finally caught up to us after getting the lead on the Devils in the next series. Would have been a great memory for life had I had the chance to win the cup that year as well. I don't think we'll never forget that game, but I think it would have been even more memorable had we gone on to win it instead of losing in 7 games to the Devils in the conference finals.
All right, Jonesy, we got a few more questions for you, then we'll call it a interview. Who was your favorite player that you played with, and what was one of your most memorable moments on the ice?
My favorite player, boy, I played with some great guys. I'd have to say Dale Hunter, though. Taught me early in Washington, the right way to play the game. Had a great sense of humor, was a fun guy to hang around away from the game, and really brought that in-your-face work ethic every night. So I learned a lot from him. Some of my best memories would be playing in Washington because it was my first opportunity to play. Best memory would be my first NHL goal. It was a neutral site game in Indianapolis. That's when we used to play 2 games at a neutral site during the season. And I ended up scoring a goal there after one of my buddies from college showed up at the game and yelled at me in the warm-up. I stepped on a puck. I ran head first into the boards in the warm-up and shook my rust off after that and went out and scored a goal against Eddie Belfour. So that would be my best memory of my playing days.
And how did you get into now working with TV and radio? How did you start doing that?
I was a good interview when I played, and I was awful on TV when I started. Started on ESPN. The expectations were that I would be good. I thought I'd probably be good too, and I was horrible. I was sweating through my suit because I knew I was awful. And it took me about 15 shows on ESPN before they got rid of me. And I started doing Flyers post-game shows on a couple of orange chairs with Michael Barkan and Steve Coates and Al Morgani and Al Meltzer, and did that for about 5 years, making $200 a show, and got better at it, and just got experience in a laid-back atmosphere, got more comfortable with the camera, and combined that with the morning radio in Philly that I do. I learned a ton from Angelo Cataldi and about timing and not speaking over the person the people that you're working with as far as their microphones, all the stuff that you guys are learning right now. Important stuff that you need to know. And I got better at it and gained some confidence, and now hopefully I'm doing well enough that I'm not irritating the people that are watching me.
All right, Jonesy, final question for you. Could you just tell us a little bit about your book and how you got the nickname Jonesy?
Yeah, they just, typical hockey nickname, they add a Y to the end of your last name. That's how Jonesy came around. The book was an idea by John Buccigross, who he donated the money to Alex's Lemonade Stand. It's a fine read. It's an easy read. Some people get frustrated by some of the grammatical mistakes in there, but what are you going to do? It's an easy, fun, fast read that doesn't have a lot of shocking stories in there, just mostly fun stories that people would enjoy.
All right, Jonesy, thanks for coming on with us. We very much appreciate your time.
You've got it, guys. Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.
And we're going to take a quick break, everybody.
This concludes our podcast of Sports and Rants with Brent and Pants. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Twitter @Sports and Rants. Like us on Facebook. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes. And visit our website, www.sportsandrants.blogspot.com. It would help our rankings on iTunes if you rate and review our podcast. Thanks, and have a good day.